Hello everyone. In this video we're going to look at how we can use some Google tools in helping us with FIP5, the student ownership of learning. And mainly here we're going to be looking at how we can make rubrics available to our students for whether they're assignments, essays, projects, presentations, and then allow some self-assessment or some peer assessment of, of each other. And so we're going to be doing that through the use of various different Google tools. In this case, we're going to be using Google Classroom, Google Forms, with an add-on tool called docAppender, which will be pretty cool, and also using Google Docs. So let's take a quick look at what that'll look like here. So within Google Classroom here, this is a teacher account over here. You'd be giving your assignment. In this case, it's a science presentation on something. And you'll be making available Google form, which will actually have your rubric in it. To the students, and also you'll be assigning them a Google Doc that will hold all the feedback that they're going to be receiving, whether it's from you, from their self, if they're doing a self-assessment, or their peers, if they're having each other assess themselves. And then we'll also make available to the students up front, when we're giving the assignment, the actual rubric itself. So let's look at what that will look like. Here in the middle, this is a student account, and this student has their feedback form open. It's just a Google Doc, and you can see that they've already received some feedback. In this case, it was a peer assessment done by student 2. Currently, this is student 1, and student 2 did a peer assessment. And you can see here's the different learning targets that they were being assessed on. And you can see what level they were assessed at by their peer. Over here on the far right, this is the Google form that was used to create that. And so I'll walk you through this as we fill it out again. So let's say I'm student 2 here, and student 1 was doing a presentation in the front of the room, and I'm doing a peer assessment of that. So I'll select that I'm their peer. I'll choose the feedback form to use, which in this case I'm assessing student 1, and then I can go through and evaluate that student, my classmate. So maybe you got a 3 in organization, maybe a 4 in content, maybe I only thought it was a 2 on the graphic presentation tools. Eye contact, maybe it was a 3, and knowledge, maybe students seem very knowledgeable. I can also put some additional feedback here, such as great job. Obviously, we can give much better feedback, but for the sake of not watching me type, we'll just put great job there. And I can have student 2 could have their responses sent back to them so that they have a record of what they submitted to student 2 or student 1. And when they hit submit, you'll see, and take a second, this shows that it was received, and then voila, there you go. Look, it just got added onto this Google Doc for student 2, and you can see the ratings here that were done this morning at 9:51 by student 2, and here's the ratings that we gave the student on each of those different learning targets, and then our additional feedback of great job. So you can see that all this, all the evaluations that are done on this particular student all go into one neat location here where they can go back and reference their work over time. Now, very possible that this could have been an essay that was being assessed. In that particular case, the essay would actually appear here at the top of the Google Doc, and then all the rubric evaluations would appear below the actual essay. And then they just keep building on as more and more evaluations are done on the bottom here. And then they're all time stamped in order there. So let's see how we can actually do this. So first thing we're going to have to do is we have to start with the rubric. So we have to, as a teacher, we have to figure out what our rubric is for that particular assignment. So in this particular case, I have a rubric here for a science presentation example here. This has my different categories, my different learning targets here, and then I have my different levels here, 1 through 4. And so this is what I'm going to be using in my Google form. So next thing we're going to have to do is actually start creating this Google form. So let me come over here to my Google Drive, and I'm going to go to a folder here that I pre-created here, just called Pure Self Demo. I want to be storing my stuff in here. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to say I want a new Google form. And if you're in the folder that you want it to be located at, when you go to create it, it'll automatically go into that folder for you. Okay. So I'm going to start here by calling this a peer, peer self rubric form. Okay. And so now I need a couple of questions here. And so what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to fill that out there. I'm going to come back here so we can kind of see what this look like. So first thing you need to know is who's the evaluator. So I'm going to fill out this question, evaluator. Okay. And so this can be a drop down, could be multiple choice. I'm going to do this as a multiple choice. So we've got self, we've got peer, we've got teacher, and then we can click this, add other, maybe somebody else. Maybe we have a guest coming in, and maybe they'll be doing some evaluation for you. And we can decide whether this is required or not. We should probably make that required. I didn't do it over here in the demo, but probably be a good idea to make that required. Okay. So now we're ready to add our next question. So our next question is the student feedback document. Okay, so what we need to do is, in this particular case, because it wasn't an essay that a student had written, this is actually a presentation in the front of the room. We basically just need to make available a blank Google Doc. So again, I'm going to come over here. And actually, before I do that, let me come back to my Google form and let me name this Google form. There we go. Just clicked up there and it automatically named it what my heading was here. So now I come back over here in my Google Drive and that doesn't say untitled anymore. So I want to add in here a blank Google Doc. And here, this Google Doc is going to again state blank, but as soon as it finishes loading here, I'm going to name this doc. Little connection issues here. Doc for student feedback. That's all I'm going to do with that form. Okay, it's just going to be a blank form, blank Google Doc. Sorry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my form here, and I'm going to need the student feedback documents here. But in order to get this area filled out, I need to actually create my Google assignment. Okay, so I have to go to my classroom here because I want this to be a unique document for each of the different students. So how do we do that? We are going to create a new assignment, and I have to turn off my highlighter here because it won't let me create an assignment with my highlighter tool on. So I'm going to create an assignment. I can go ahead and turn my little highlighting tool back on. And I like to number my assignments. So this is my third assignment here. And this is going to be called Science Presentation Demo. So in there, I'm going to do a couple different things. First, I'm going to make available the document for student feedback, the one I just created, which is just a blank Google Doc. I'm going to add that. And I'm going to make sure each student gets their own copy of that. Assign. Okay. So now what happened was that if I come over here to my student 2 and I refresh their page here, you'll see that student 2 now has the science demo assignment, and they actually have this document available for them with their name attached to it already. Okay, so now that all my students have this blank Google Doc available for their feedback, I'm going to come back to my Google form, and now I can actually get this part filled out, which will allow me to see all my students' assignments. So now I'm going to have to use a tool called docAppender. Okay? So with docAppender, it's an add-on. So first thing you have to do is install the add-on called docAppender. So if you haven't done that already, oops, cancel. You're going to have to go to add-ons and search for docAppender. Okay. Now, if you haven't installed it yet, there'll be an add button here, a blue add button, but I already have mine installed. And you would go through the installation. Okay. So now I'm ready to actually use it. So come over to this little puzzle piece here, and I'm going to launch docAppender, and we're going to open the sidebar. And it'll open it down here in this side of the screen for me. And here what I'm going to do is first pick my target folder. So I'm going to pick it from my drive. And this contains where all the documents are stored. And if you're doing this through Google Classroom creates your own assignment folder. So in Google Classroom, I have this number 3 science presentation demo folder that was created, and it'll actually show up as one of your more recent ones. So I'm going to select that folder. And then I'm going to click Next. And then on here, let's go ahead and call this the student feedback document. Okay. And we don't want this to be a paragraph. We want this to be let's have that be a drop down. Let's hit refresh list over here. So here's our student feedback doc question. So that's the question that's going to pick our assignments here. And then I'm going to click Save and Populate. And you can see here's the blank document that I created, doc for student feedback, and it's one's name for test student 1 and one's name for test student 2. Okay. So that question is now done. So now I've got my who's the evaluator question. I've got my question here, which will allow me to select which document their feedback is going to be attached to. So then over here, what do I have left? Oh, I just have to put my learning targets and the different levels associated with them. Okay. So let me just add 2 different learning targets. I'll do the organization one, and then I'll do the additional feedback part. Okay. So I need to add a question. Okay. And it's okay if it accidentally goes up to the top. We can adjust that. We can grab the little handle over here, or where's the little handle at? There we go. The handle's up at the top. Okay. So on our rubric, our first category was organization. Okay. So take organization. I can just copy that, paste it over here. And we want this to be multiple choice. Okay. Now, don't want to have to keep going back and forth, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Wouldn't it be great if there'd be a way to have all this go in one shot? Well, if you highlight across and hit copy, and then come back to your Google form and paste in here, it all goes into one long line, and that's not real helpful. Okay, but what we can do is using an option within either Excel or within Google Sheets. What we can do is we can copy our whole rubric, open a new sheet, and then in Google Docs, if it's a Google Sheet, it's called transpose. Within Excel, you'll actually see when you go to paste, it actually shows the rows with an arrow, the rows in the columns with an arrow being flipped when you go to paste special, and that'll flip your chart. Now you can see that your levels are going down and your targets are going across. So now what I can do is I can take my organization target with all the different levels, copy those, come back over here, and when I go to paste in here, it pastes each one into their own line, which is very nice. Okay, so I have that question. So there's my organization, and then let me add one more question here. Have this selected. This guy is kind of in the way. Hit add another question. We'll move this guy down to the bottom. And we'll just call this additional feedback. Okay. And that can stay as a paragraph. Okay. So now we have our Google form. Okay. So now on here, I'm going to hit next. Now it's loading all the different questions we have. Now these are the different things that we want to show up when we have our feedback show up on the document. So yeah, we'd like the timestamp there. We'd like the evaluator. Who's the evaluator? Oh, the username's not showing up here. Now, why is the username not showing up there? Probably because we have not collected the user's name. So on our settings here, we say, oh, we want to collect the email address. Okay, so we're going to click Save there. And now I'm probably going to need to refresh this. So let me go back. And let me hit refresh. And then let me, this is a little hard to see there. Let's bring this up a little bit. So there you go. Whoop, a little bit too big there. We'll bring this up for you a little bit. So there we go. So there's a timestamp. There's the user's name. We'll do the evaluator again. And let's bring this over to the side so we can see. And then student feedback document. You can choose to show that or not show that. Then organization. And then there's additional feedback. Obviously, we could add more questions in here with the other targets, but to save some time here, we'll just do those two. Okay. So this is set ready to go. And I like to separate it by vertical tables. That's what you've been seeing in the example. So I'm going to hit enable. And then this is all set once you hit enable. So now what we need to do, if we hit the send button and then we come over here to get the link, we do the shorten link here. And we're going to copy that, Control C, or get copy there. Okay, we can close that. I want to come back to my Google Classroom here, and we're going to make this available to the students. So I'm going to go to my assignment. I'm going to hit edit. And under additional information, we'll call this form rubric. And we'll paste that in for the students. We'll hit save. Okay, so now that's available for our students. So now should be just about done. So let's see what this looks like. So let's say I'm student 1 here, and student 1, you can see here's my assignment number 3. There's that Google form, and maybe I'm going to do a self-assessment. So I'm going to click the Google form. I'm going to do a self-assessment. I'm going to choose, I'm going to choose myself here. I'm student, I'm just test student. And I'm going to say my audience can't understand the presentation. And one of the things that you see here, I did not include the numbers here. I did that copy and paste from the rubric, but the associated numbers didn't go with that. But that's okay. We can fix that real quick. That's not a problem. What we can do is we're going to come back to our Google form, and over here, let's go ahead and edit this question. Actually, I can get rid of this here, And in our Google form here, let's make this a 1. We'll make this level 2. We'll make this a level 3. We'll make this a level 4. And so now we got our levels over there. So if we refresh our form here, yes, we're going to reload. So we'll refill this back out. And look, there's our levels there. So we're doing a self-assessment of test student 2. I'm giving myself a 3. And I'll just say I'm awesome. Okay. And hit submit. Okay. So I filled that out. So now if I come back here and I open, oops, this is test student 2. I guess I did that for test student 2. So if I go to test student 1, and I open up my form, I bet you test student 2 did the self-assessment for test student 1 by mistake. And yep, that's what I did. Said it was a self-assessment, but it really wasn't. Didn't realize I was in test student 2, but that's all right. You can see that that worked. I just confused my 2 students there. Okay, so now if I truly was test student 1, if I was student 1 and I wanted to do a self-assessment, I could open up the rubric and say I'm doing a self-assessment of student 1. I give myself a 4 and great here. And you notice here that I do not have the option to send myself an email of the results that I filled out there. So if I come back to my form here, let's blow this back up again. And if I go to my settings here, response receipts. So if I check that box, I can check always, or if they request it, I can just put request. I'll hit save there. Okay, let me get that back over there. If I refresh this screen here, reload, you'll see now I have that option there. So if I hit self, student 1, I give myself a 4. I say that's great. I send myself a copy of the results. I hit submit. And then if I come back to my doc, and you can see right there, here is the feedback that I just gave myself, which goes right below the feedback that test student 2 gave me, which was really not a self-assessment, it was a peer assessment. So, so now this is fully functional, and you can go back. You can add all your other learning targets on to your form. If you get a new student in the middle of this, you can always just come back, relaunch your docAppender, still in your same location. You can refresh your list, and when you refresh your list, it's going in the student feedback, save and populated the questions. It would add in any additional students that you might have there, and you would be all set to continue using that. Okay. Hope you found this helpful today. And as always, feel free to email me or grab me in the hall to ask me any questions or schedule a time for me to meet with you. Great. Have a great day. Thanks.